Hungarian Folk Tales. The Two Old Friends. Once upon a time there was a poor man. He was very poor and had a lot of children. It was near Christmas time and they had nothing to eat at home. So he had the idea to go out into the forest and collect nuts. Out he went and collected half a sack of nuts. He then took the nuts to the town where he planned to sell them. As he got close to the town, he met an old friend. "Good morning, old friend." "Good morning, old friend. Where are you going?" "I've got some nuts in this sack. I thought I might exchange them for some food for the children. Christmas is here and we have nothing to eat at home." "I've got half a sack of poppy seeds and I also have a lot of children. I would like to exchange it as we don't have anything to eat at home either." "Look, old friend, let's exchange the sacks without looking at what's inside." And they quickly exchanged sacks. Then one of the old friends arrived home. "Well, children, I got half a sack of nuts in exchange for that half a sack of ashes. I shall pour them out for you to eat." He emptied the sack and it was full of oak apples. What a man! He cheated me. He will pay for this. The other old friend also arrived home. "Wife, look, I brought half a sack of poppy seeds for that half a sack of oak apples." The children were so excited that they danced around the table. The wife brought out a giant bowl. "Pour those poppy seeds out." Poured them out, but they were ashes. What a man! Why did he cheat me? So he set off to the town to meet his old friend. They both arrived and began to threaten each other with sticks. What a man! Why did you cheat me? They began to fight, but after a while, one of them began to laugh. Why did you cheat me? We could never cheat each other. Let's join forces and work together. A rich man gave them each a job and employed them for the last 3 days of the year. When the 3 days were up, they went to the man and asked for their wages. The rich man gave the order to bring each of them a plate full of gold. They were both very happy. They both got their wages and they both set off home. They were poor, but at the same time, they were cunning men. Look, old friend, we should go back to the pit where the gold was kept and we can take more of it during the night. So they took an empty sack and went back. How will we go down there? It looks very deep. So they fastened their belts together and one of them lowered the other man down into the pit. The one in the pit quickly gathered up as much gold as he could. Let me know when the sack is full. I'll pull it up first and then I'll pull you up. But the man in the pit had a better idea. If I send the gold up, he'll run away. I have to stay down here, but then they'll catch me. He put a lot of gold into the sack, but he did not fill it up. Then he climbed into the sack with the gold. Now you can pull. As they were nearing the forest, the man in the sack said, "Put me down, old friend. I know I must be heavy." "Oh, you are here too? Of course. I didn't want to stay down there. Let's have a rest. I'm very tired." "Very well, let's have a rest." The man was so tired that he sat down and fell fast asleep. So the other man picked the sack up and began to run away. When he awoke, the other man had gone. "What can I do? He's taken it now." Very well. Then he cut a stick, tied a thread to it, and cracked it like a whip. "Get on with you!" And he made the noises of an ox cart. The other man heard the noises. "Just in time. I'm so tired. I shall put my sack on that cart too." Then he saw his old friend. "Old friend, we could never cheat each other." "No, we couldn't. Let's have a rest, old friend. You must be tired too." "I really am very tired." Then they had a rest. Now the one who had taken the sack fell fast asleep. The other man saw that his old friend was fast asleep, and he took the sack and ran all the way home. There he told his wife, "Put this gold quickly in a box. Take the hoe, come with me to the cemetery, bury me, and if my old friend comes to see me, tell him I am dead." So they went to the cemetery. The woman carefully buried him under a thin layer of soil so that he would come to no harm. Then she returned home, where she held her head as if she was crying. When the other man awoke, he could not find his friend. He knew that he must have gone home, and so he hurried to his house. "Good evening, dear lady." "Good evening, kind sir," she said in her saddest voice. "What's the matter? Why are you so sad? Where is my old friend?" "Your old friend? He died. I have just come home from the cemetery." "Poor friend. I'm really sorry that I couldn't attend his funeral. Dear lady, lend me a hoe and I'll go and tidy up his grave." "No need for that." "It's tidy enough." "It's an old friend's duty to tidy up his old friend's grave." So they went to the cemetery. The man saw the fresh grave and didn't dig with a hoe, but started to stamp about like a bull, clawing at the soil. "Moo, moo, moo," he said, and he hit the ground with the hoe. "Stop that bull," said a voice from the grave. "If you dig me up, my old friend will find me." "Moo, moo, moo," the other man said again, and he got hard to work with the hoe. "Stop it, bull. My old friend will find me." "I've already found you, old friend. Come out." Oh, well, we could never cheat each other. No, we never could. Then they went home, divided the gold between both families, and had a very merry Christmas. Hungarian Folk Tales. Little Diogenes. When I was a little lad, my father sent me out to the forest to watch the cows grazing. He told me to keep a close eye on the herd because if any of the cows strayed away, he'd skin me alive. tried to watch them as best I could, but I found a blackberry bush by the edge of the forest with ripe berries on it that were big and fat and black. Well, like I said, I was only a lad, and I instantly forgot what my father had said and set to work eating as many berries as I could manage. And while I stood feeding my face, the 2 cows strayed away from the grass meadow and began to make a meal of valuable hay. And just as that was happening, the devil sent the local constable, who cracked his whip and drove those 2 stray cows away from the hay they shouldn't have eaten. I gave chase as best I could and appealed to the menacing man. "Constable, please, they're my father's cows. Let them go with me." But the man took no notice at all and saddled his horse and rode away. He set out for the town and I followed him as best I could on foot, but he was soon far out of sight. So what was I to do? I couldn't stand before my father without his precious cows. I thought it best to run away instead and drown my sorrows as best I could. So I sat on a pile of pebbles by the side of the road and wept and wailed, for I was still only a lad and I'd had to leave home. Soon a woman passed and she said, "Why are you weeping, young lad? What on earth occurred?" So I told her of my troubles and that I did not dare to return home, or else my father would surely skin me alive. My parents would never see me again and I would be orphaned and homeless. "Don't be so foolish, young lad," said the woman. "A parent's punishment strengthens the soul, but a blow from a stranger only bruises a boy's body. Now take yourself home before it gets dark." "I will not," I told her boldly. When the woman saw that she spoke to me in vain, she washed my filthy face, then she took me by the hand and led me to a large stone house. When we reached the kitchen, she placed a plate of steaming porridge before me, but my belly was so filled with berries that I couldn't swallow as much as a spoonful. But I didn't dare leave it because I thought she'd think me ungrateful. So I took the porridge and spooned it under my shirt. Then after I'd fed my shirt this fine supper, I lay down by the stove to warm myself. And as I lay in the snug, my sadness slowly slipped away, and I was happy to have found comfort in the kitchen of this motherly woman. But it wasn't long before her husband returned, who was not what I'd call a fatherly man. As he caught sight of me lying on the blanket, he complained to his wife, "Why have you brought another hungry mouth to the house? But he's nothing more than a lost lad. I thought he could help about the farm." "Help? With what? A skinny thing like him will eat us out of house and home." "Hey you, get up and lift up this sack of corn. I want to see if you're strong enough to be of service here." I tried to lift the heavy sack, but my 8 years proved not enough to lift the heavy weight. But I was soon undone when my belt burst open, my shirt shot out of my trousers, and a pool of porridge landed on the floor. "You filthy thief! You have stolen from us on your very first day here." And he took out a whip to give me a thrashing. The wife begged him to spare me, but instead he grabbed me by the scruff of the neck and stuffed me into a barrel. Then he sealed the barrel tight and rolled it far from the house so that no one passing would hear my cries. "And there you'll stay, you filthy thief, and tomorrow I'll have you locked in jail," he snarled. I was now stuck tight inside the barrel and could do nothing more than groan and moan. But then in my hour of greatest need, I remembered a lesson we'd had at school about a wise old man by the name of Diogenes, who used to live in a barrel much as this. Then I thought of a plan. I had a knife in my pocket and I could wedge it in between the staves, but the barrel was made of old oak and the wood was so hard that my knife broke. Then I sighted a fox that alighted in the garden. The chicken shed was closed, and so the fox began to nose around my barrel. The fox appeared at the very best time, as I had an idea that made me feel as wise as old Diogenes. And I started to make a noise like a laying hen. Cluck, 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 cluck. What a good place to sit. Instead of eggs, I'm sitting atop a pile of sweet honeycomb. Oh, my dear little hen, would you give your friend the fox a taste of that sweet honey you have? Of course, my foxy friend. Simply stick your tail in and I shall smear it with sweet honey that you can lick off later. The foolish fox did just as I suggested and popped its tail in through the hole that I grabbed and held onto with all my might. The hen thief thought it was caught for good and began to leap about the place. And it leapt and jumped, jumped and leapt until the barrel had broken apart. Free at last, I ran and ran until I found home. My parents were happy that I'd returned. My father gave me a harsh beating for my sins and not watching over his valuable cows. But my mother rubbed my back with soothing cream and I continued to grow in my loving home. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Poor Man's Vineyard. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there lived a poor man who had 3 sons. The poor man had a tiny vineyard, but he owned no more than that. And he guarded his vineyard as if it were gold. His sons would also take turns to stand watch at the vineyard all day and all night. One morning, it was his eldest son's turn to guard the vineyard. And the boy sat down and started to eat. While he was eating, a frog hopped out in front of him and said, "Give me a bite of bread, young man. I haven't eaten for 2 long weeks." "When pigs learn to fly," said the young fellow, and he chased the frog away. The frog left in silence and the boy fell fast asleep. When he woke again, the vineyard had been so badly ravaged that the boy was filled with fear. Next day, the middle boy went to the vineyard. He too was asked for bread by the frog, but he also chased the frog away and threw a stone at the beast. Then he lay down, fell asleep, and when he awoke, less than half the vineyard remained. "Hey," the poor man moaned, "all we have is this tiny vineyard and they can't even look after that." Then the youngest boy said, "Worry not, father, what is left will be safe now, for I shall guard it." So the youngest son went to the vineyard, sat down to eat, and the frog hopped out and asked him for bread. "But of course, here, take some." Then he broke off a crust and gave it happily to the frog. "Eat, frog, for you are one of God's creatures too. You are a good boy and you will be rewarded for your kindness in time. Now I shall give you 1 copper, 1 silver and 1 golden rod. During the night, 3 horses will come, 1 with a copper mane, 1 with a silver mane and 1 with a mane of gold. They will come to trample your vines, but if you strike them with these rods, they will be tamed in an instant." The night came at last and the 3 horses galloped in, kicked and neighed and threw earth up into the starry sky. But the youngest son was soon to act and hit hard at them with all 3 rods. Then the horses were tame and stood and stared like 3 simple sheep. "Don't hurt us," the horses pleaded. "But should you need help, wave the rods in the air and we will appear." Then the boy went home. But the youngest son decided not to tell his brothers and his father of what had happened that night. All three were surprised by the crop that was so abundant they could barely gather it in. And no one in the village had vines as rich as theirs. Time passed slowly by, and one day the king decided to erect a pine tree outside the church. Then he placed a golden sprig of rosemary atop the pine tree and told the world that he would give his daughter's hand in marriage to the first man who could snatch the golden rosemary from atop the pine tree. All manner of men tried their hand, but none could jump higher than half the height required. And when all of them had crept away in shame, a fine fellow appeared on a copper-haired horse. He wore a copper helmet so his face could not be seen. Then he spurred his horse on, leapt high in the air, snatched the golden rosemary and rode away. The copper knight was the poor man's youngest son, of course. He went home in his tattered clothes and was sitting in the corner when his father and two brothers returned to the house, because they too had witnessed the joust. His brothers told the youngest one what they had seen. "I too saw what happened. But how is that so?" "Because I stood atop the fence and watched from there." His brothers were so furious that they smashed the fence to stop him watching again. The next Sunday, the king placed a golden apple on an even taller tree. Many men tried their hand, but all again in vain. But as they walked away in shame, a knight appeared aback a silver-haired horse, and the knight wore a silver helmet to hide his face. With one jump, he grabbed the golden apple and vanished. By the time his father and brothers returned, the youngest son was sitting in the corner again. They quickly regaled him of what they had seen, invisible to him from the corner. "Oh, I saw it better than both of you. How is that so? I climbed atop the pigsty roof." The brothers were so furious that they tore the pigsty down to stop him watching from there again. The third Sunday came and the king put a golden scarf atop the tallest pine tree. And it was the poor man's youngest son who again snatched it off. He escaped and recognised again because he rode a golden-haired horse and a golden helmet to hide his face. At home, the brothers both bragged of what they had seen. "I saw it better than both of you." "How is that so?" "Where from?" "From atop the house roof, of course." His brothers were so furious that then they pulled the roof to pieces. Meanwhile, the king declared that the knight should appear who had taken the golden rosemary, the golden apple, and the golden scarf. But the days became weeks, the weeks months, and no one came forth. Then the king summoned all the men in the land to his palace. But the famous knight was still not among them. All of them gone, a young man appeared with hair and clothes of gleaming gold. The golden rosemary in his hat, he led his horse with the golden scarf, and he held the golden apple in his hand. Thank heaven he had appeared at last. The king was delighted and the princess overjoyed. The wedding was held the very next day. The king gave the golden knight half of his kingdom, and they all lived happily ever after.